Microsoft and Mac. You can see how technically minded I am. Didn't work. So we shall make do, no problem. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Hopefully you'll all be able to see my slides. Can we all see that okay? Amazing. I'm getting a few nods. Lovely. We're going to start from the beginning. So welcome to the last session of this fundraising festival, a fantastic festival I think it's been. I've seen lots of great feedback and lots of comments as well. So hopefully I do it justice as well. Why did that just move? So who am I? I don't think I know anyone on today's session. So I am an experienced community fundraising and events manager. I've got 8 years in the sector. I don't like why that keeps moving. We're not going to let it bother us, don't worry. I am currently the fundraising manager at Heart UK. I started in August this year, so I've been there a few months now. Heart UK are the cholesterol charity. They're based in Maidenhead. And I am also the admin behind the Community Fundraisers Network group on Facebook. There will be a link to that at the end. And if you do want to network with me and connect with me, if you scan this QR code, I think there must be a timer on this first slide. I hope it's not all the way through. Frankie's nodding. Then you can connect with me, and it's also on the last slide because it's probably going to move. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to learn what community fundraising is and how it goes hand in hand with events fundraising. They are very different, but they do work together and they work very, very nicely. Frankie, is there any way I can turn this?
If you right click on your mouse, you can get pause to come up. You can, sorry? It should ask if you want to pause. Yours hasn't.
No.
Do you want me to try screen sharing for you?
If you don't mind, sorry.
Yep, not a problem.
Sorry, everyone. It's always mine.
Give me 1 second and I will screen share for you.
That damn Mac user. It's always Apple, isn't it? Just be simple.
It's fine. 1 second and I will do that.
We'll do it at the beginning and it'll be straight sailing from here. Just also while we're having these difficulties, if my dog barks, it's because my partner's due home any minute. So you might hear some barking in the background. So I do apologise. Just ignore him. Thank you very much, Frankie. That's fantastic. So we are also going to cover, next slide. Lovely. Hopefully you're going to walk away with some top tips for running a community event, what the benefits are of hosting your own community event, aside from any other sort of events you might host, and discuss how COVID-19 has changed the face of community and events fundraising. And that'll also go hand in hand with the cost of living crisis and some other things that have affected the landscape moving forward. Next slide, please. So I would like your thoughts on what you think community fundraising is. So you can put these in the chat, you can shout out to me, however you see fit. I really don't mind. What do you think community fundraising is? Now, if I give you a hint that there is no right or wrong answer to this, this might help you to come up with your definition. Anyone want to give their thoughts on what they think community fundraising is? It's not a trick. Oh, lovely. Kate. Kate has said something like money for a new playground. Yeah. Anyone want to say something else against that?
Bucket rattling.
Bucket rattling, that's the classic. Yeah. Events run by members of the public. Lovely, Rachel. Yeah. Anybody else? No. Money, David said money for a community project, for example, raffle, quiz, etc. Cara says raising money for the benefit of the public. Excellent. They are all fantastic suggestions. And in essence, you are all completely right. There is no right or wrong answer with what community fundraising is, because essentially it means something different to all of your organisations here today. The way I have done it in previous organisations and the way Heart UK do it is totally different to how you might do it in your organisation. And the reason for that is because you all have different aims and objectives. You all have different communities and your causes are all different. The skills in your team are different. So what you might see other charities do in terms of community fundraising, you might think, oh, it'd be great to do that. It'd be great to do a silent disco or bucket rattling throughout the really cold months and days of winter over Christmas. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for your charity and your team and fit in with your fundraising strategy. So my idea of community fundraising is using your community network to demonstrate the work your cause does and encourage them to fundraise on your behalf. So let's think about third-party events, for example, that we will talk about a bit later in the session, against an event that you might put on yourself. So, for example, a 10K run you might do in a local park in January to blitz the Christmas bulge that we all are guilty of. Raising my hand here. I already had cheese and port last night. It's terrible, isn't it? It's not too early. Don't even say that. They're two very different events, but we'll look at how different they are, but also how similar they can be as well. So you've got a third party with the London Marathon, then you've also got an event that you have hosted yourself, you have funded, and you have promoted yourself. So you're using your same networks, but you're using them in very different ways to encapsulate their engagement. So just whenever you come back to thinking about your community fundraising strategy or your fundraising strategy, whatever that looks like moving forward, just remind yourself of what you think community fundraising is and what it's going to mean for your organisation. You can look at examples, but you need to come back to the reason why you think community fundraising is the way forward for you. Tip number 1 for you. Next slide, please, Frankie. So is anyone familiar with this fundraising pyramid? It is one of my absolute favourites in terms of fundraising. And I've shown it before and people have gone, what on earth is that? So the idea of this fundraising pyramid shows the lifetime or the progression of your donors, of your community, of your supporters. So if we look at the bottom section, the orange on-site first-time gifts, that is essentially the first area that a lot of your community will come into. If we look at the second layer, so that pinky salmon colour, that's annual giving. So that moves up. You might have someone that gives only to your annual Big Give campaign every year. The next layer is they might progress. The more they get to know you, the more you nurture them and steward them, they might progress to a regular gift. The next layer, the green layer, is major gifts. You're thinking about, well, they came through us via our Big Give campaign. They then moved on to a regular gift. They've been giving for 10 years. Now we should be thinking about what's next with these people. They clearly love us. We're loving them back. So it's that major gift level. And then the very top is the bequests and planned gifts, like your legacies that everyone's thinking, that'd be fantastic to get that. But it has to start somewhere. So this timeline this kind of pyramid gives you an idea as to the progression that some donors and supporters might travel through your organisation. So thinking about community fundraising and the fundraising pyramid, now you've got a better idea and you've given some fantastic suggestions as to what you think community fundraising is. Now I'd like to ask you where you think community fundraising sits in this fundraising pyramid. You can again shout out, or you can put the answers in, your suggestions in the comments. Again, there is absolutely no right or wrong answer, so I'm not going to pick on anyone. Rachel has said orange. Yeah, definitely orange, Rachel. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you why you think that. I don't pick on people. I don't believe in that. Let's have a look. We've got Della has said orange or salmon. Kate has said all of them with a question mark. I love that. And Sharon has said orange. Just wait for a couple more, see if anyone else is thinking about it. Okay, so again, you are all bottom three, Julie says. You're all absolutely right. You're totally right. Community fundraising slots into all of them. And the reason for that is because you are effectively the bridge between your community and your organisation, your charity. So let's take, for example, you've got a stand at a local community event. Maybe it's the party in the park that we had a few weeks ago. I know Frankie was at that. On bank holiday weekend. Can't remember if it was really hot. I can't remember what the weather was like now. But you've got a stand there, you're promoting your services, you've got a little bit of a fundraiser, you might be doing a Teddy Tombola for the children, maybe some face painting. So that's your sole purpose of that fundraising stand. And that fits into community events because you are organising that stand. You're not organising the event itself, but that's taking your resource to organise you being there on that day. You have a conversation with an individual who has come to your stand, requested some information, never heard of you before, has asked about some volunteering and has given a donation into your collection pot. That is essentially the orange level. Where do they move now? So you might start nurturing them, start working with them as a volunteer. You might show them around your facilities, maybe have a Zoom call with them and they can meet the staff or understand your services. The timeline is looking more and more meaty. You can see exactly who this person is. Do they look like a marathon runner? Are they someone that's going to support you with your annual Big Give campaign or your summer barbecue campaign? Who exactly is that person? And we will talk about this a little bit later, so understanding who our donors are. But from that person you've met at that fete that you organised with the sole aim of raising funds via face painting, you've essentially met someone else who might be a legacy fundraiser, who might have connections with a major trust and foundation, or might be a major donor. They might also think about giving a monthly gift. So be open-minded about the people that you might meet. Community fundraising fits in every single fundraising slot. And this is one of the tips I'll give to you at the end of the session, is it works with every area of your fundraising team. You should all be working together. So I believe the fundraising pyramid is in one of the resources I've given out afterwards. So just familiarise yourself with it. And you can adapt your own one as well. Think about when you come to put your fundraising plan together for community fundraising, understand what's already included in your fundraising team and how you can work together in terms of your community fundraising to really push those opportunities and push those boundaries to really open up those fundraising asks. Next slide, please. So now we're going to have a look at developing your community fundraising plan. Another slide, please. So whether you have already done this, you already have a top line fundraising strategy, or you're thinking about drilling that down now to think about the other areas of fundraising that are going to help you with that overall fundraising strategy for the next 5 or so years. It may have been that you have had consultations with your team and you understand that the current climate we're in, that we're seeing a decline in other areas of fundraising, so we maybe should think about other areas to diversify our fundraising in the team. And that's why you're here today, and you've chosen community fundraising. Yay! It is my favourite. So when you're thinking about putting your fundraising plan together, you should consider the following. Think about your community fundraising objectives, and I have touched on this already. Think about the sole reason as to what you want to gain out of community fundraising. Is it to think about the potential for who it might put you in front of? As an example, you can schedule in 10 presentations throughout 2023 to community groups, and that would include Rotarians, maybe Freemasons, WI groups. My dog might bark in a second. Might include 41 clubs, maybe some schools. What is the objective of those presentations? Is it to get them to pick you as their charity of the year? Is it to look at who's in that room and understand, are there any connections there that might be able to put you in touch with some community can you hear him? Some community foundations or some trusts and foundations that you might be able to apply for money, for grants, sorry. Why are you choosing community fundraising as your opportunity to move forward with fundraising? You might not know those answers yet, but just have a think, and those objectives can change over time as your plan evolves, as your fundraising evolves, as your team evolves, as your organizations get bigger. Your objectives will continuously change, but just have them in the back of your mind and just think about, why are we doing this? Next slide, please. Thank you. Next one is a SWOT analysis. So I did do a training session a few months ago on SWOT analysis. Now, for anyone that doesn't know what a SWOT analysis is, a SWOT analysis is a fantastic tool to understand your current position within fundraising or any sector that you are in. So you can take this, and this again is one of the resources that I will give you. You can take this with you. You can do a SWOT analysis on yourself. You can do a SWOT analysis on your partner. You can do an analysis on your cleaning maybe, or your organization. So the SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you essentially divide your page, an A4 page, into 4, and you have strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, or mirroring the other way around. And essentially what you do is you get together as a team. You should do this as a team, not as an individual, because all of your team should feed into this, because they can come at it from different angles. What are the strengths within your fundraising? What are the strengths within your community? What is already active within your community, and that will help you to really build on this fundraising plan? What are the weaknesses? Now, weakness could be, for example, that you're low on resource to be able to give this the time and effort that it needs. Could be that you need some further training on perhaps delivering presentations, or dividing your time up, or how to put a fantastic event together. An opportunity could be that you want to go back to the silent disco idea that I mentioned 10 minutes ago, and you've seen that within your local area there aren't any over the next 6 months, so that could be an opportunity for you. You can see that I love a silent disco, so if you organise any, I do want an invite. And a threat could potentially be, of course, the cost of living crisis. People are thinking about the pennies that they're spending out on. They are drilling down on their bank statements. They're pulling out those direct debits that they forgot they were paying out for. So that could be a potential threat. A threat could also be that big virus thing we had over the last few years. I don't say that word anymore, but that's a threat. That's not something none of us ever saw happening, but is something else going to be a threat, something similar? It should potentially be in your plans, a contingency plan. What if this happens? Next slide, please, Frankie. Think about your investment. What do you need to really give this community fundraising idea justice? Now, if you're thinking about the events, it could be that you need some new materials, fundraising materials. You need some funky resources, a fundraising pack potentially, volunteer t-shirts. You might need to invest in a volunteering advertising campaign, which again is another session in itself. It could be that, again, as I've mentioned, you might need some further training on some of the areas of community fundraising. Think about what you need to fulfill community fundraising as a role. It could be that you need another member of staff, perhaps. Again, all of these, as I go through, are very unique to your organisation. So I can give you tips and I can give you information as to how I think you can do it, but not all of this is gospel. Okay, you don't have to go away from today and say, Leah said I must do this. That's not the case. It's just giving you some essential ideas that can really help you and support you moving forward. Next slide, please, Frankie. Think about how you're going to measure success. And this is one of the areas that's really it's bypassed a lot. We see success as well. How many of you have ever heard a member of staff, or even heard yourself saying it? Well, we did a fundraising stand at, let's say, Party in the Park a couple of weeks ago. We wanted to raise £100 by doing fundraising, face painting, but we only raised £5, but we gave out loads of leaflets. Has anyone ever heard themselves saying that, or a colleague say that? I'm going to put my hand up. So this goes back to, as well, thinking about your community fundraising, your objectives. What is the reason why you're doing these things? How are you going to measure that success? Now, if your sole objective is to raise funds, you should be thinking about investing and measuring that success. If your objective was to hand out loads of leaflets, that's what you should be focusing on. If it's a mixture of the two, and you've only raised £5 against your target of 100, how are you going to measure whether you've exceeded or your expectations or under exceeded? How are you going to understand how you can improve for next time? Think about those measures for success. That's your KPIs, key performance indicators. Maybe you could think about how many fundraising stands have we been to, and which ones are the best ones to go to? Which ones are saturated with other local charities? Which ones don't have much footfall for the 6 hours that I've been here? What are the most affluent areas to target, to think about having those stands? Measure your success, because all that will happen is you'll go through the financial year, go to all of these events, organise all of these events. You won't measure the success of them, and they'll either dwindle, or you'll get to the end of the financial year and think, I didn't raise near enough as much as I thought I would raise, and I can't understand why. So it's always good to measure and always good to summarise and learn from what you're doing, because that's how we improve. Next slide, please. So your next thing to consider with your fundraising plan is your donor accessibility. How easy is it for someone to make a donation to your organisation? Now, we've seen the rise of QR codes, of contactless donations. We've seen pennies and cash are starting to decline. I can't remember the last time I withdrew cash from a cash machine. I genuinely can't. It's terrible. But I use contactless for nearly everything, and sometimes I even use my phone. So when you're at your events, just think about how easy it is for someone to make a donation. Now, if you are, Frankie will agree with me on this, if you are in a field in the middle of nowhere and you think Wi-Fi is going to be the easiest way to enable your donors to make a donation to you, you are sadly mistaken. You need to think about having a backup plan, and a backup plan for that backup plan, and a backup plan for that backup plan. So think about text donate, think about having your collection pots, because there are still going to be people that do want to give cash. Have your regular giving leaflets, your standing order forms at your fundraising events. There are people that might become regular givers as well. And this is where I keep coming back to, your whole team should be thinking about supporting your events, because there are opportunities for them as well. So yes, you might not look after regular giving, but if they understand that you're going to have this event that's going to put your organisation in front of potentially 2,000 donors, having a standing order form or your regular giving leaflet is a no-brainer. It's easy. It's an easy, quick win. Yeah, so an easy exercise, and something I would always encourage you to think about, is if you had someone ring you tomorrow morning at 9:30 in your office and said, I'd like to make a donation, I've seen a leaflet in your local Tesco, how would you respond to that? And then the other side of the flip the coin over, you're in public at a fundraising event, you've got a stand and a collection bucket, and they say, I've got no cash on me. There's a lot of people say that. What would your reaction be? You don't have to give me an answer. It's just something for you to think about in your own time. Next slide, please, Frankie. So work with other areas within your fundraising team. I've touched on this a few times now. So reverting back to the fundraising pyramid, think about how you can work with your corporate fundraising team, your individual giving team. You might not have a full team. I have built all of my experience working in small teams, so I know there aren't 3 people in the community fundraising team, 20 people in events. It just doesn't work like that. I know that. But if there is one person that looks after trusts and foundations, one person that looks after individual giving, maybe one person that looks after your individual giving or marketing, digital fundraising, or if it's you that does all of it, put a plan together as to how you can start feeding in all of those different areas. So corporate fundraising, they might say that might put us in front of some corporates we could make an ask to. If you're doing a presentation to a Rotary Club, or you've got an event at a local market day, there's one in Aylesbury where you can have your charity stand. What material can you feed in from all areas of the fundraising team to really maximise on those opportunities? It should not be just community fundraising. Think about the people you might approach, or that might approach you on that day. And the last one, think about your action plan. How are you going to move forward? Put all of these actions, or put all of these points into action. So the last thing you should be doing is, from today, thinking, oh, I've got all these great ideas, I'm going to go and do this, I'm going to go and get loads of places in the Great North Run, I'm going to have a stand at all of the upcoming Christmas fairs, I'm going to book into all of the festivals next summer, all of these things, but you haven't moved backwards. So start from the very beginning. What are your objectives? What is your SWOT analysis? What are the opportunities? What are the quick wins that you can really maximize on very quickly? Take all of these key points and start to formulate a plan. In the next 2 weeks or in the next month, 2 months, I aim to achieve this, and this is how I aim to do it. So you're thinking about your SMART targets. Make it realistic, make it achievable. Don't try and overestimate what you think you can achieve, because fundraising, community fundraising, events fundraising takes time. There's some marketing stats that I will always remember. It takes someone about 8 times to see something on a poster before it actually goes in. And I completely agree, because when I was in Aylesbury, I did move from Aylesbury a few months ago. I would walk to town and I'd walk past sort of 7 bus stops that would have an advert for, like, say, a coffee at McDonald's. And I don't really drink coffee, but I'd get to town and think, oh, I'd really like to go to McDonald's. They've done their job, right? If you think your community event is going to pull all those bottoms on those seats and you want to get 200 people to attend your next fundraising quiz or your next gala ball, and all you've done is put some posters in some Tesco shops and done a post on Facebook, that's not going to help you achieve that. So think about everything you need to action to really make that possible. And we are going to talk about this in the next steps. So next slide, please. So how does community fundraising support your events? Now, you're a little bit clued up now as to what community fundraising is, how to formulate a bit of a plan, how to make some investment. And I appreciate, I appreciate this isn't going to give you all of the answers you need to really get going next week, next month. It does take time. It does take a lot of thinking around your best course of action, and all of you will come away today with a different viewpoint and thought as to how you're going to move forward. So next slide, please, Frankie. Community fundraising supports events in so many ways. I've already mentioned, yes, community fundraising slots into lots of different areas. We've mentioned about the people that you might see at your events. It can also support existing relationships. So not every event you're going to expect to see new people. Events can support existing relationships because they can help you promote the event. You might host, let's say you're going to host one quiz night in August next year. It's the first quiz you've ever done. It is groundbreaking. No charity's ever done it. And you've got Kylie Minogue as your quiz master. I would like to be there, please. It's groundbreaking. It's £5 a ticket. You get a glass of champagne, fish and chips, and everyone's a winner. And all you need is 50 people on those seats. I think you're going to do that quite easily, aren't you? Yeah. You are using your existing relationships, pushing that out to the people that you already know, using your donor data to understand, I've got a pool of people here that I know love quizzes. I've got 10 presentations to do over the next few months to Rotarians, to these groups that I know love these types of events. you're going to fill those seats very, very quickly. And that's because you understand your donors, you understand your community. So you're using those existing relationships you've got. Using those existing relationships, you can also work with like community champions or your ambassadors, your trustees, your patrons, your staff to promote your event as well. So it's like that snowball effect. One question that's always asked to me is, how do I engage staff in fundraising? And the answer is you can't, essentially. You can give them the resources, you can ask them to do everything that you want them to, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it. The best piece of advice I can say is the snowball effect. Essentially, I've asked Frankie to tell 2 people that I've got 3 spaces for London Marathon next year. I haven't. This is hypothetical. Frankie goes and tells those 3 people. Those 3 people don't want to do the marathon, but though Frankie has asked those 3 people to ask 2 people each. And you start to create that snowball effect. You've had 1 conversation, but you've essentially spoken to 7. Now, the opportunity that you could have missed, I could have missed if I'd only asked Frankie to do the marathon. Frankie, would you run the marathon for me next year?
No.
There you go. It's very simple, but using your existing relationships, you can understand what they like, what they don't like, who their networks are, and how you can start to tap into them. You can use different audiences to promote events as well. So if you know that you'd like to start working with a younger demographic, and you're trying to sell them an event that they're never likely to go to, let's say, for example, a golfing event, and you'd like to work with the millennials or the TikTok lovers of the world, I like to call them. Do you think a golf day is going to entice them to start working with your charity? No, probably not. Now, I'm not saying TikTok is the answer for you, but maybe an event that everyone's talking about, those inflatable 5Ks, spaces in events that really give them that experience, that buzz. Maybe a skydive might be a better option, or thinking about doing working with schools and doing the Dragon's Apprentice. So you're looking at their skills, trying to support them with their CV. Think about the audiences you want to reach and how your event can get you in front of those people. Community events are often considered a low-cost income line, so they're considered a higher ROI, or return on investment. Now, the reason for that is mostly because a lot of the time, community fundraising, you'll have very small budgets, or you'll call in quite a few favours. So I will always remember my first fundraising role. I was sort of pushed in, go and raise your funds. I don't really care how you do it, but this is how much you've got to raise. And I thought, right, so I've got an events degree. I'm going to, this is how I'm going to do it. And I split all of my income lines into chunks. And I said, right, just do a pamper evening. Why? We've got loads of parents that might work with them. So we did this first pamper evening, and we did time slots, and you had to book a time slot for all the different treatments, and every treatment was a £5. And it was one of the best fundraisers that we'd done for a long time. And it was so simple. And I asked for donations for most things. So the treatment therapists would also put a prize in the raffle. So I didn't have to buy anything for the raffle. One of our corporates donated the venue. So I didn't have to think about the venue. Someone else in the events team supported with some volunteers. But a lot of the time, your trust and foundations team might apply for grants, and a condition of the grants might be that they offer volunteering days. So have a chat with your trust and foundations team, because that might be something they can support you with. So again, you're working with as a whole team, but they're essentially community events are a low cost with a high ROI. And I would always say start small and build them up. So don't go in thinking, our first event, we're going to do a fundraising gala. I'm going to get Kylie Minogue to headline. I don't know why I keep saying Kylie Minogue. I don't even really like Kylie Minogue. It's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. Again, trying to appeal to everybody. Or Michael Bublé, perhaps, who's currently defrosting for Christmas. Yeah, think about starting small. Don't expect to raise £50,000 from your first event, your first riding event in Buckinghamshire, because it's not going to happen. Fantastic if it does, but it's sometimes better to underestimate than it is to overestimate and explain why you didn't achieve what you thought you'd achieve. Forward and future thinking is what community fundraisers are. So the tips I've given you already is, yes, you're thinking about potentially dipping your toes into community fundraising and hosting these events, thinking about what events you can start organising, but you'll also be thinking, who's going to be in that room? What's the opportunities I might have with them moving forwards? What supported journey am I going to put them on? What's the after event communications I'm going to send them? What's the call to actions at the event? What's the call to action after? So yes, you might have someone, you might decide that third party events is an opportunity for your team, and you might buy next year 20 places in the Great North Run. Just because that one person has run Great North Run doesn't mean you leave them for a year and expect them to run it again. Think about what can entice them and keep them engaged throughout the year. So as community fundraisers, we're always forward and future thinking. And community fundraising can support events because we share skills. And I will keep drilling this into every talk I do about community fundraising, and it is because I'm passionate about it, but I think it's also an income stream that is sometimes tipped to the bottom of the pile. You know, it's, oh, I don't really know where to put that. Community fundraising can do that. Or you've worked your absolute soul off for 3 months nurturing someone that you did meet at a stall, a fundraising stall, and you've been on the phone to them, you've sent them resources, you've gone and had a cup of tea, you've done a presentation to their local community group, and you've got 50 quid out of them at the end. It is soul destroying, but you've used all those skills and you've used your future thinking to think about, yes, it's £50 now, but where's it going to be in the next 6 months? What would happen if I didn't do that? I wouldn't have learned all that I've learned about this one person and the networks that they have. Next slide, please. Frankie, if you just want to nudge me if I'm running thin on time, because I appreciate I can waffle on a little bit. So we move on now to the event planning cycle. Now, there are 5 areas to the planning cycle. Frankie, we just want to move to the next slide. And all it does is highlights each section of the wheel. So your first section is preparation. Now, within preparation, you should be thinking about, again, what your objectives are. What is the sole reason for you organising this event? Is it because Rachel, you have always loved the idea of doing a quiz night with Michael Bublé? That's been your dream. You don't know if your donors are going to like it. You don't know if any of them are going to attend, but it doesn't matter, Rachel, because you love it. Your friends love Buble, your family loves Buble. So you'll get all those bums on the seats by friends and family that are already engaged in your charity. No. Prepare, think about your objectives. What do we know about our donors? What do we know that they already like doing? What feedback have we learned? Have we surveyed our donors? What is it they want from us? In the preparation, you should also be thinking about your timescales. So thinking you've got, I'm at the end of the financial year, I've got a month to go, and I'm just going to put this event together because it will just be an easy way to get the last bit of my budget in before the end of the year. No, you should be thinking about a realistic timescale to properly plan, promote, execute, and evaluate your event. You cannot do a successful, polished event in about 2 weeks. It's just not going to be done. You can definitely organise it, but it won't be what you won't get out of it, what you think you want. So prepare. And I believe also, Frankie, in the handouts, is the event planning cycle in there as well. There was something in there. Yeah, excellent. So if you do miss anything of this today, I can always send a follow-up email to Frankie and she can send that out to you, because this is the bit that is really key to your event planning process. Cycle, sorry. So the next slide just highlights ding, planning, ding. So this is your planning stage. So you're thinking about setting your budget. Where are you going to host your event? Are you going to have an inside venue, an outdoor venue? Is it going to be online? Is it going to be hybrid? Do you need sponsors for your event? And if you are going to have sponsors, other sponsors there to support you to cover those costs? Or are they there to maximize the opportunity there? So they might provide your raffle prizes or your auction prizes. Think about how you might use sponsorship, and if you use them at all. What materials do you need? Are you going to have your event participants, if you're doing a fun run, are they going to get medals at the end? Are you going to give out t-shirts? What do they get as a result of their registration fee? Are you going to set a fundraising target for people? If it is a sponsored event, are you going to set a target, or are you going to keep it open-ended and encourage them to do it themselves? A lot of Facebook challenges. I would highly encourage you to have a look at some of the Give panel stuff. Facebook challenges are fantastic for really generating income, because they encourage people to do fundraising throughout a month, and there's no timeline and there's no fundraising target. So that might be an opportunity for you to look into if you've got fantastic followings and engagement on Facebook already. Not every fundraising event needs the fundraising target from sponsorship. You might say it's £50 to enter, raise what you can, or £50 to enter, 10% of this goes to admin cost and the rest goes to our running costs, our charity. Think about everything you need to make that event possible. And then the next cog in the wheel. Oh dear, that wasn't supposed to happen. Let's go back. Is promotion. There we go, promotion. So how are you going to promote your event? Now, I mentioned this earlier, is if you think you're going to get all those bottoms on your seats for your Michael Bublé quiz night or your Kylie Minogue quiz night, buy one post on social media, a few flyers in local shops, and the occasional chat with your friends, your family. So a lot of the people who's on those seats are people that you already know. There's in the evaluation, there's no one new to your charity. Think about how you're going to promote it. So you might use Facebook ads, your Google ads, I'm not technically minded, but your marketing team or whoever looks after your social media can help you to put those ads together to target people who are your ideal demographic, who are your ideal audience. Do you have a newsletter that goes out? It might be an e-newsletter or a physical newsletter that goes in people's post. Does it have an events calendar on it? How are people going to find out about your event 3 months before it happens? Don't expect people to just see a flyer come through their door and they're going to book it straight away. They need to see it more than once to really get it. And sometimes it takes one cycle of the event to hear word of mouth that it was a fantastic event. Michael Bublé did turn up, and there was no problems with parking like that hoopla with Waddesdon Manor recently. It was Bublé, wasn't it? Yeah, and McFly. Yeah, I do remember. You need to have more than one way of promoting your event, because you should be thinking about how are people accessing information about our charity, and that encapsulates the demographic as well. So not everyone's online, not everyone's subscribed to your newsletter, not everyone shops in Tesco. Think about how people might absorb information and where you might find those people you want to attract. And the next cog in the cycle is your execution. So this is the event itself. What do you need to make that event the best Michael Bublé quiz there has ever been? Well, of course, Bublé needs to turn up and he needs to make sure that he sounds the best he's ever sounded. But you need your quiz pack. You need volunteers to support you. You need your venue to be ready. So you need time before and after your venue. And this goes for any event you do. It doesn't need to be a closed event. You need time to prepare before and after the close down as well. And this goes in your evaluation. Do you need to brief your volunteers? Do you need to brief your team? When do they receive that information? You're going to send a pack before. So just as an example, I was at the London Marathon 2 weeks ago in London, obviously, and the day before there were the train strikes, and I was fretting, oh gosh, we're not going to be able to get there. So I literally sent an email out to all of the people that were planning to be on the cheer point and said, here's alternatives to how you can get in. This is what I'm going to do. You're more than welcome to come with me. I'm going to be there for 8:30. I was there at 8:30. I had to start at 5 o'clock that day, but it was fine. Just think about your information that you're giving to your team to make it happen. Also in the execution, think about your calls to action on the day, on the event itself. What do you want from your participants? Is it that your whole objective of the event is to get more newsletter sign-ups, or to get more lottery players, or it might be to recruit some new volunteers? Whatever your objectives are, what are the calls to action at your event that are going to encourage you and support you to do that? And after the event itself, think about your close down. So this is literally packing away to also doing your post-event evaluation. And I would always say to do that, to just have a bit of a debrief with your team, and then you can come to evaluate, which is your final point. So once you've closed down, you've thanked all of your, no you haven't, that's in this section, getting ahead of myself. So your evaluation is literally your summary of your event. What went well, what didn't go so well, and what would you change next time? Now, again, I do put all of these, thank you. I do put all of these tips, these slides will come back to you. So your evaluation is your event breakdown. What went well, what didn't go so well, and what would you change for next time if you were to do it again? And I would encourage you to do it again. If someone in your team says, well, that didn't work the first time around, we're not going to bother doing that again, Do you think Bill Gates said that when he first invented Windows? No. Do you think I'm trying to think of other people that have made amazing things, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. But do you think the organizer of London Marathon nailed it from the first go? No. It's never been as big as it is now. It's got to that point. Now, it would never be what it is now if they just went, nah, we're not doing it again. Didn't work the first time around, or it didn't get quite as many runners as we did, so we're not going to bother again. Learn from your summary and improve it for next time, because it will improve. Do an income calculation. So how much did you raise? Now, your communicated income to the team, to your community, are two very different things. So what I would say is always tell your community the income before you take out cost. So if you've raised £10,000 and you've spent £8,000, and a lot of those people can see that there was 150 people there that have spent X amount, they're going to work it out that you haven't raised very much, which means your cost was very high. So always communicate to them the overall total income. And then to your team, you can say, we raised this, but then this is what we spent. Because that's what you can use to evaluate. Was the ROI what it should have been? Would we do it again? And then you send your thank you to all your participants, London Marathon runners, Great North Run runners, your inflatable 10K runners. It might not be runners at all. Whatever community event you're doing should always be a thank you, whether it's on social media, if it's a posted invitation that you sent out to get people there, it should be a posted thank you. Think about the information and how they've received that information about your event, how you should send that thank you back to them. And it should always be done really soon after your event as well. So there is no point in 3 months' time thanking your marathon runners for doing marathon 2 weeks ago, because they'll go, I forgot I did that. They won't forget they did it, but they'll think bit of an afterthought. You should be doing it the week after your event, within the week. If you're going to get feedback, I would encourage you to think about that during your event, and then you can evaluate the feedback. So whilst you're at the event, ask for people to complete feedback forms, maybe get some case studies while you're there, some quotes, that sort of thing. Analyze the findings from your summary and the feedback. So because it's your work, you can be overly critical as to how your event went. I'm sure Frankie will be overly critical on herself and the team as to how this festival has been, but I think, and I'm sure you'll all agree, it has been fantastic. But because she's got different objectives, what you and I see is very different to what Frankie and the team sees, and that'll be so similar to your events as well. And that doesn't mean you've done it wrong, it just means that you're looking at it from that detailed eye that you should all have. And then write your post-event summary. So close it off, write it all down, don't forget it. Do this really soon afterwards as well. So I would do my debrief to the team, and then I would either write it the following day, even if it was on a Saturday, or I'd do it within the last few hours, because if your event's on a Friday and you go and have a nice weekend, or you take a bit of loo time, you go on holiday, you'll come back and go, what happened at the event again, and how many people were there, and what was that conversation I had, and what was that feedback I got about that from that one person, and a lot of it will just leave you. So write it down as soon as you can. Next slide, please, Frankie. So yeah, how has COVID-19 affected events? And we are almost there, so we'll open up for questions in a couple of minutes. It has affected sign-up. Sign-ups are a lot of the time a lot later. So people are thinking, oh, I'm going to sign up a bit later, sooner to the closing time for tickets to come off sale, because I'm not sure about A, the weather, B, whether I'm going to have COVID myself, if there's going to be a risk, or if there's going to be another spike in cases. People are just being a little bit more wary as to whether they should sign up at all. And of course, they're wary, they sign up later because they're watching pennies as well. So they might think, or if I've got a bit more disposable income this month, then I'll buy my ticket this month. But if not, I'll have to wait till next month. So think about those implications as well that might affect your ticket sales or your sign-ups to your events. Are you giving people enough time? We've seen an increase in people sign up to third-party events. So you may have seen London Marathon have changed their gold bond places for next year and the years going forward. A lot of events are exactly the same. I had an interesting conversation with Run for Charity a few months ago. They said that a lot of charities are going down that third-party route because there's less risk to them, because essentially if you went through Run for Charity, you only pay for that place if that person runs it and raises funds. So unlike London Marathon, you pay up front. A lot of the other third-party organisers or agencies you go through, you will only pay if that person takes part, and if not, you roll it over or you get that space refunded. So we're seeing a rise in that as well. So there's less risk to the charity. The cost of living crisis is a huge effect on events as well. As I've said, people are being less frivolous with pennies at the moment. They're thinking about, it's not very Gucci, but I'd rather have a nice hot house, nice warm house, than go and do, sadly, see the Michael Bublé quiz night, which is just tragic. But they are being more mindful as to what they're spending, and especially now we're coming up to Christmas. It's affected postage, so there's loads of postal strikes from now to Christmas. I think there's 19 scheduled over the next few months. So if you're thinking about sending invitations for your events, that should be something you think about. Is that the best way to do that? If our advert goes out in is a leaflet drop, is that the best way to do that as well? People are thinking about bucket list opportunities, and what I mean by that is we've had 2 years where we've been cooped up, not really been able to do very much. So a lot of people might have lost loved ones and have been thinking about, well, I should write my will, really. It's been a bit of an eye-opener for people. People are taking a rain check on that thing I've always wanted to do. I think I'm going to go and do it now because I can. People are thinking life's too short. So if you are thinking about, well, let's do a skydive for our fundraisers. And actually, if anyone's ever used Hinton Skydive Centre, I can see them from my window, which is just here. I can see them jumping out of the plane every day. Oh, it's quite exciting. There are things that are on people's bucket lists. Find out what they are. People are also looking for that social experience. They want to get sociable again. They want to be out and about and doing things, whether that's the hybrid or if it's that's my dog coming in the door. It might be online, virtual, whether it's a physical event. They want that social experience. We're also finding that a lot of events are oversubscribed. So event organisers are oversubscribing on events because they know they're going to have a drop-off rate. We can't stop that from happening. I think that's going to be something that happens moving forwards anyway. But just be mindful that if you are hoping to get into any ballots or buy tickets for any third-party events, think about when you should be doing that to really get those opportunities in. As some are harder to enter. as I've mentioned already, London Marathon is one of the hardest to do. It's not impossible, but it's very hard. Applying for the ballot, encouraging people to enter the ballot and hoping that you'll get some own place runners, you can't use that as an opportunity to get into those doors. It's very difficult. So think about diversifying your events program. Are you going to have a mixture of third-party events that you organise, events that you piggyback on with your community? So you might be the chosen charity for something. Diversify everything you do. Don't just go down one route. And I think that brings me to the last slide, which are just some general tips. Lovely. Stick to your budget. You can reforecast. So if you haven't raised quite what you thought you were going to, but you've overachieved on something else, you can reforecast throughout the year. But stick to your budget. If you know you only want to spend £500 to raise £3,000 and you end up going way over your budget, that's going to affect your ROI, your return on investment. Stick to your budget. Be realistic with your objectives. It's so much better to overachieve than it is to underachieve, because you've overestimated what you think is going to be possible in that 1 year, or in within that new strategy. Excuse me. Do your research. Understand who your donors are. Understand what your community is doing. Do your SWOT analysis, and always come back to it. Refer back to it and keep doing it again and again, because just because you did it 6 months ago doesn't mean it's going to be the same today. So keep referring back to it and changing it, because your objectives as an organisation change anyway. Always have a contingency plan. So when I said earlier, have a backup plan for your backup plan and a backup plan for that backup plan. It could mean that you have 20 plans for one scenario or one event, but you're going to cover every avenue then. There's, who had a plan for COVID before that happened? Exactly. Have fun and enjoy it. Fundraising, events fundraising, community fundraising is challenging. It is difficult. All areas of fundraising are difficult, but if you're not enjoying it and organising these events and being in front of people and seeing the joy on people's faces when they're participating, and yes, you see London Marathon runners that are always crying past you at mile 13. I was one of those ones that were watching them, not doing it. At the end, it was so difficult, but I'm so glad I did it. It was the best experience of my life, and that's what you want to create. You want to give people that good experience where they keep coming back. And the last slide, please, Frankie. Now, this is my favourite piece of advice I can give you all evening. Whether you're a trust fundraiser, moving into events, into community fundraising, whoever you are that bridge that guides people to your charity. You're not the shoes that help them walk. And what I mean by that is, you can give people lots of ways to fundraise and get involved in your cause. You can't make them do it. All you can do is give them those opportunities and that experience to really understand what it means to work with your charity. So take that with you. And the next slide. Good luck with your next event planning. You use the QR code and it won't move because Frankie's paused it. Connect with me on social. I'm out and about. This Civitas Consultancy was my self-employed name before I went back into employed work, but I am still on social and I will always answer questions if you have them. Me and Frankie have a chat here and there, just about things fundraising wise. So yeah, I hope you've taken something out of this evening, and I thank you so much for your time.